What are we
Mate,
going
I
to
tell
talk
you
about?
what, everyone always talks about this. We'll look back at episode 1 and go, what the hell we're doing?
And
So I
I
look
guess
forward to that moment.
I guess for the listeners, we say we've been planning this for 6 months. You're to
We're
blame,
a
mate.
bit
You're
younger.
to blame.
I am absolutely to blame.
We're all part of this whole money game. This whole.
Abraham, what's going on, mate?
Andrew, welcome to Beers and Business.
Yeah,
First
cheers.
one.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, I think I've been planning this for about 6 months, maybe even longer now.
Yeah, and I think as it approached each day, my internal anxiety and lack of conversation skills. There you go. First mess up of the day has made us push it back even further. So here we are.
You're running out of excuses in the excuse box, mate.
That's right. But hey, we're here and we're ready to go. Episode 1, introduction.
Mate, I tell you what, everyone always talks about this. We'll look back at episode 1 and go, what the hell we're doing? Absolute idiots. So I look forward to that moment.
I guess for the listeners, we say we've been planning this for 6 months, but the plan's lacking a bit of detail. So we'll make it up as we go. We've got a general structure, but I think the intent of the podcast is to keep it pretty informal. So that's what we'll aim to do as we go through.
Yeah. All right. So I guess for those who don't know us, let's go through a bit of an introduction. Andrew, I'll let you go first so you can quell your anxiety.
Yeah, bury it deep down, mate. Yeah, cool. So for those out there that don't know me or are listening for the first time, I'm Andrew Martin. I'm a Queensland boy in Australia, originally from Redcliffe. I'm now living on the beautiful Sunshine Coast with my wife and 2 very young children. I'm the current CEO of Teamgate CRM. And I guess my journey to my current role as CEO is probably a little different to most, except probably you, Abe, but we'll hear your story in a minute. So I joined the Army straight out of school. I began my career as an artillery officer. And then, that's where my path first crossed with Abe. And then 3 years ago when my son was born, I made the decision to transition out of the military and into the business world. So, that's where Abe and I's paths crossed again, where I first spent a year or so as a director of operations, learning all I could learn, and then moved into the CEO role at Teamgate, where I am today. On the personal side, love all things sport. As you can probably see by the mark on my face, I've recently returned to playing sport. So played rugby on the weekend and copped a good boot to the face. So here we are today.
Well-deserved boot, I'm sure.
yeah, definitely. I think the person was lining me up for it. So,
well, I know you wouldn't have been making a tackle because your tackles definitely don't go that low.
I think I was missing a tackle, to be honest. I think I was diving and copped the boot to the face. So, yeah, well deserved.
The head's quite a small target when you're aiming for a tackle, mate.
Exactly.
No, it's good. And as far as where I am, I'm currently in Bathurst in New South Wales, about 2.5 hours from Sydney. I live here with my wife. I've got 3 kids, so 1 up and Andrew. I have got a 9-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So I have no doubt they'll make an appearance at some stage. Thankfully, they're all at school now, which is great. And I made the move from the Army. So, Andrew and I have a bit of history inside the Australian Army and artillery, so much so that I actually taught him on his basic course way back in the day.
You're to blame, mate.
Younger.
You're to blame.
I am absolutely to blame for everything. And after that point, I actually got out of the Army right at the start of COVID or midway through COVID, and joined Xenon Ventures, worked at a company called Expleni as the Director of Operations, where I spent about 18 months there as the Director of Operations, and then moved into the CEO position of Teamgate and 5CRM, where I learnt a whole heap as we went through the acquisition process of those 2 companies, dealt with a lot of really cool people, and it was drinking from a fire hose, most definitely, most days. And after that, handed over Teamgate to Andrew, handed over 5CRM to a bloke called Steph, based out of the UK, and I'm now moved into CEO over at App Assembler. which is a learning management system built on top of OpenEdX, and also has some virtual labs for the techie people that are out there that might listen to this at some stage. So it's a very different sort of worlds that I've had the opportunity to work in, with Xplenty being data integration, TeamGate and FireCRM being very much sales focused, and then AppSembler being focused on the education space. So definitely a wide variety of companies that I've been a part of. And during that time, it's just been absolutely crazy. The amount of things that I've learned. I mean, Xenon has a bunch of best practices that we implement, and just going through that process of coming out of the army and into the business world has been an immense learning experience, which sort of brought us into why we're doing this podcast. Really, is that we obviously have a lot of friends who have either started their own businesses or are working inside a company, and we get a lot of questions about best practices, and we end up over beers or whatever, we'll end up just talking about different business things and spitballing ideas. And what we've found generally is that there's just this thirst for information across the board, with pretty much everyone asking similar sort of questions, whether it be, how do I get a marketing funnel? How do I do sales? How do I even figure out how to do my billing? How can I automate things in the back end? I mean, those are some of the questions that I've seen. What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, and I think, it's not a lack of intelligence or smarts. These people are very, very intelligent that we're speaking to. It's just a lack of knowing, right? It's like us. We know the military really, really well. You and I both transitioned into this unknown world, and just between the two of us over the last couple of years, we've learned so much, which, in talking to friends or even colleagues or clients, they just you don't know what you don't know. So for me, a lot of my personal friends, family will, I like to talk about, the trade industry. So a lot of people will be an electrician, they'll finish their apprenticeship, they'll be a qualified, tradesman for many years, where they're extremely good on the tools. And then they decide to leave and start their own business, but they don't know that other side of the business. They know really well how to do the day-to-day and execute on the tools. But, that lack of knowledge is the other side. How do we grow that business? How do we expand our funnel? How do we market to target certain niches, or move into a different industry, or compete with the bigger names? So, that's one of the biggest reasons we thought we'd start it. We like to help people. My day-to-day, I'm helping small businesses every day implement these strategies. So we thought, why not, instead of answering the questions on an individual basis to our friends and family and clients, why not throw it in a consumable format such as a podcast, so people can come have a beer and listen on their way to work, or at the gym, or wherever they are. Get some nice strategies and takeaways that they can test within their own businesses on the day-to-day.
And that's the thing. There's a whole bunch of figuring it out, and trying to figure it out on your own is it's a massive ask of people, and you don't know what you don't know, and you operate inside an information vacuum. And I think one of the luckiest pieces that we've had, from our transition into the business space, is that we've had people to bounce ideas off. We've had, a set of tried and tested methods that we've been able to employ, and it just allows us to get that, almost 10 years of experience boiled down into, the 2 to 3 years that we've been able to run companies, because you understand so much more. And, you take those leadership, those management practices that you learn, the project management side from the army, and you're able to employ them with, some pretty decent cues and tactics to take away with that. And then that's how you reimagine how that works for your particular industry as well. So I think it's like a big a big area where there's just not enough information out there, and often the problem is that too often people are, I guess, have their own agendas. Like you look at all the, the Instagram influencers and TikTok influencers about business. Like, we were watching one the other day about spreadsheets and sales, and it literally gave me heart palpitations watching it and going, who in their right mind would manage their sales in this way?
Yeah, who has the time to maintain it?
Yeah, like a spreadsheet for like a 5-region sales team that you manage and have to update daily, or they have to update daily. It's like, man, that is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure. And there's no, 100% set blueprint for business. Like there's not a, of course you can go do business degrees and things like that, but at the end of the day, it needs to be some sort of practical application. And that's where we've had the benefit of learning through testing. And, we follow, best practices and things like that. But a part of that is testing. You need to find and test different things to work out what works for your industry. What works for the trade industry is going to be completely different to what works for the sales industry or the tech industry. So yeah, we're here to prompt some ideas. We'll go away, we'll test it, and we'll see what we come up with week to week.
Yeah, which is a good segue into what you can expect. Weekly we plan to do this podcast. Who knows what'll happen in the future? Yeah. I know there's a couple of podcasts out there that are like, yeah, so this is the weekly podcast, and it's been a month since we've done the last one.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but we'll try and keep up the weekly cadence. But I mean, what you can expect is, I don't know, Andrew's doing a really good job at hiding it. He uses hairspray for anyone else who thinks that's weird, but he got a really bad haircut right before the podcast. We were talking about him laughing, and his wife's words to me was, Andrew doesn't need any help making his head look any longer. So,
yeah, thanks for bringing that up in a public forum, Abe. I'm glad we could do that to our listeners to really help with that anxiety I was telling you about.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, it's a shocker. To be honest, I hadn't used hair product in about 12 months until I got this haircut, and I had to do some work to try to make it look presentable. But yeah, so expect some bad haircuts. I've seen Abe with some terrible ones in the day, so. Maybe he'll rock up with a mullet in the coming weeks. We'll see what happens. But Abe also mentioned children barging in. Expect that. I've got a 2-year-old who likes to be on my lap throughout the day, so he might barge in at some stage. But other than that, we're here to talk business, but in a very relaxed, laid back manner. So easy to digest. We just want to prompt ideas, give you some practical takeaways. And then look at, tactics, tools, techniques, things that you can go and test in your business. And then you guys will have input as well. So let us know what you want us to go through and we'll test it. So whether that's, things like website reviews, send us your website. And if you're happy to, we'll jump on and we'll have a look at, CRO.
Yeah, if you want a website tear down, absolutely. And one thing that a piece of advice that I gave someone that I was talking to around here was like, you just have to make things as easy as possible for people to get to the decision point of buying. And I remember she was going through designing a website, and we sat there and were like, all right, one thing that I found invaluable when I was booking a service that was, I think it was a local like skip bin service, is you could go in and book the time and date you want it delivered and pay all online without having to talk to someone on the phone. And I was like, this is great. This is for me. Every other place didn't matter. And so I said to her, hey, you just need to make it as easy as possible. Here's the experience I had. Try and replicate that. And so we went through and did it. And she runs a cleaning business. And one of the first steps when you are looking at a residential clean is that you need to do a walkthrough. And so you understand how many hours it's going to take to clean, how much you charge them, things like that. Otherwise, you end up saying like, oh, it'll take 2 hours and the house is huge or it's completely messy and it takes way longer. So you book a walkthrough. But the problem is for these walkthroughs, it's usually people submit a form, send an email, try to call the cleaner who's probably busy cleaning a house at the time. And so what we did was we implemented this tool called Calendly, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, but essentially what it allowed it to do was people could just book book the walkthroughs on blank spots in her calendar. And so she actually had one lady comment not long after we implemented that she went on the website, booked in a walkthrough, and she's like, I knew you were going to clean my house from just how easy it was to book this walkthrough. And that was enough customer feedback straight away to say that this is a great practice to have in, because how hard is it to, you call someone up and it's like, oh, no, I can't do Friday at 9 a.m. Can you do Tuesday at 10? Maybe, let me get back to you, and then it never happens. So at least with the Calendly, you can go through and go, yep, I'll make that time work, book it in, put your address in, and they rock up, do the walkthrough, and then book the business from there. So, looking at how we can take away those barriers back to the website teardown is, if it's hard for someone to get to that point of buying, we want to try and see, in that website teardown, come through with some ideas about, hey, maybe if you implement this, maybe look at doing this, and provide some actionable feedback that you can take forward. So feel free to submit your website for a teardown.
Yeah, just opening that funnel up, right? And for businesses, at least initially, if the biggest problem you have is that top of funnel, is bring them all in. And if it gets to a point where you've got too much to deal with, then we can start looking at qualification and how we can reduce that to make sure you're getting the higher quality leads coming through that funnel. But yeah, so you mentioned Calendly. I guess that leads into some segments that we'll touch week over week. One is going to be a tech toolkit. So we'll review some lower cost and some normal cost, really, really effective tools targeted for small to medium businesses that either Abe or I use in our day-to-day, or we're looking to use, or we know other companies that use it. But episode to episode, obviously today's an introduction, so we'll fumble our way through today's introduction episode. But generally speaking, it's going to be around business themes. We'll have some guest episodes. We've already got a couple of really, really good guests lined up into the future. Some really good CEOs, some really good leaders in non-profit space, as well as some small business owners who will be looking to implement some of our techniques to see what we can gain through their day-to-day operations. But so we'll have guest episodes. We'll have some recap episodes where we summarize, the month that has been or the week that has been. We'll have some business themed episodes where we look at specific sales methodologies, how to target certain ICPs, SEO, as well as tips for success, tech stacks, and the like. But
yeah,
some common themes, right?
Yeah, and we're in a really good position where we have this large amount of access to some really good business leaders that are out there, whether that be in software, in that non-for-profit space. And so it's going to be great to hear some of their insights where they've had to grow businesses in some pretty, tense environments as well. So I'm excited for that. If anyone has any books that they would like us to review, please let us know. We've got some great recommendations, and hopefully out of that, you'll be able to go forward, learn something from it, but potentially pick up the book yourself and go for a read there. But definitely, I think there's a lot of value to be gained out of that space. And looking at the tech toolkit, working inside the software industry, you get to see all these really cool tech tools that are out there, and we implement a number of them. They're often low cost and easy enough to implement if you know how. So it's just about going through and understanding that as we build out that that tech stack library for us to look at.
Yeah, it leads nicely into our first segment of the day, the tech stack toolkit. So what do you want to talk about today? I had one listed down. You've already mentioned Calendly, so should we just expand on Calendly, or do you want to talk grain?
Yeah, I mean, I'm easy either way. I really love Calendly because I think it has such a larger presence rather than just what we look at the moment as far as like grain. Not everyone will do their I guess online meetings and things like that. So maybe what we look at is we go through and look at Calendly, and maybe what might be helpful is I might just bring up their website and just share share screen for a little bit, and we can just talk about Calendly quickly. So let's let's have a look at Calendly. So what Calendly does is it is a online scheduling tool. And so this is what we implemented for one of the people that I talked to. And essentially it allowed her to increase her bookings for walkthroughs, which is the first point, right? So if you're an electrician, you're a builder, like I imagine you need to go and quote the job before you do anything else. Or, I look at a builder, if you do building and pest inspections, you could get people to book them online using this tool, so you don't have to worry about trying to get on the phone to them. Because often it's the first person to answer the phone gets the job, right? So that's a really big consideration that you need to have in place. And so when we look at the actual, pricing of Calendly, it's pretty good. You can set it up free if you want to, if that's the way you want to go. But I mean, for $10 a month for one seat, you can actually build out a really, really good process here for allowing people to book. And $10 a month is not, that's their annual price. So make sure that whenever you look at these software products, we're always really good at hiding the annual price versus the monthly price. It'll always default to annual with the 20% off. But you can also pay monthly for $12 a month per seat. And I won't go through all the feature sets, but essentially when we look at it and you want to build it in for sales as a part of that. So what it essentially allows people to do is to book in really quickly to reduce those barriers. So there's no phone calls, emails to, I guess, get in touch with people and understand that. And we'll put a link to Calendly inside the show notes as well. But just as a heads up about this tool, for us, we use it every day for scheduling meetings and everything that we do. We use it inside our businesses. I recommend it to people, anyone who has a function where they need to schedule calls or schedule some sort of walkthrough. I highly recommend Calendly. Andrew, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm a user of Calendly. I love Calendly. It was one of the first tools I was introduced to, and I've used it ever since. Didn't know it existed prior, but I think the really good thing is, I said at the start of today's call that, a lot of us run off sales best practices, and one of those is response times. With Calendly for tradies or for the cleaning industry, like you spoke of before, this almost eliminates the need for response time because that buyer can completely skip the need to have a response. They can book that call in straight away, and I say it to my construction clients all the time. At the moment, business is good for them. That they're getting a lot of business, but
you don't have to fight at the moment.
As someone who recently did a renovation of my own home, the people that were responding quickest were getting my business because I needed the job done as soon as possible. So, having Calendly is a game changer for me and for a lot of the clients. And it syncs with your calendar. So, it almost forces you to have good calendar hygiene. So, I tell my employees all the time, if you don't want to be booked for sales calls, from 11 till 12 or from 12 till 1 during the day, you need to block that time slot out, in your calendar to say you're on lunch or whatever you're doing. So, it makes sure that you're never double booked, but it also only books you when you're available. So making sure you've got that good calendar hygiene. And then the last point is just for the bigger teams. So if you've got a sales department, a success department, a leadership department, operations, whatever it is, you can actually set up groups and teams within Calendly. So, you can set up round robins, things like that, so that, let's talk about the trade industry. If you've got 3 employees that do the quoting for you, you can set up a quoting group. So, when that person goes to book the site visit, it's going to look at those 3 calendars and show the availability for those 3 employees, and it's going to book whoever's got the availability for that time slot. So, Calendly is a game changer. I recommend it, and we'll definitely drop the link in the podcast notes for today's episode for anyone who wants to check it out. And if you need help implementing it, I'm sure their support team will help you out. But as always, reach out to us and we'll also be able to assist where needed.
Yeah, and the one thing I like about Calendly is that it's super easy to integrate into your website. They provide you with like these handy links that you can just drop in. So someone clicks a button, it opens Calendly up. So I know that's a massive hurdle for a lot of people is the implementation. I mean,
Tech side.
even for us, if you need someone to go in and code it in, it's a massive pain. So a lot of these tools that we mentioned, we'll mention that are reasonably easy to get up and running. And maybe what we do is let's maybe next week when we look at the tech tools, let's talk about maybe tools that are inside that ecosystem when we talk about reducing the barriers and allowing you to do that follow up and get things on the books. So maybe we talk about we could even talk about TeamGate, or we could talk about Zapier. We could talk about one of those other tools that allows us to use Calendly to its full effectiveness as we move through as well.
Yeah, definitely. Anything that can bring automation into the world generally helps make life easier, as long as we don't get too complex. But that's it. I guess for the tech toolkit, we'll touch on it again next week. So for our next segment, and this is one we added last minute, which makes me feel great, of course. But the global business brief. So what's happening around the world in the industry, in the business space, whether it's a trending story or something that's just hot off the press. Why does it matter to our listeners? Why should they care? And what does it mean for the industry moving forward? And unfortunately, this week, the news again, as has been trending for 2024 and 2023, is more layoffs, and this time from PwC. So, Abe, for the listeners out there, I guess what's your take on the business? I guess for the background, and I'm happy to touch on some of the background, but why should our listeners be tracking this story and actually care?
Yeah, I've been following pretty closely because it's a really interesting use case. So for those who don't know, PwC actually got caught up in a bit of a tax scandal last year, which resulted in them selling their tax business for $1. And that was all. They essentially went, it is worth nothing. And so we're going to sell this for $1. And so their tax business rebranded, PwC continued. PwC have been a really big player in the consulting. They're part of the big four consulting firms. They have they used to have a really large amount of business and a lot of clout in the industry. But what essentially was found out was that they were sharing government tax information with some of their other clients to enable them to achieve tax breaks in Australia. Now,
and they were advising the government, right, about the tax.
Yes, they were advising
back in 2014.
On how to implement these tax cuts and where to implement the new tax structure, and then just before it drops, allowing all these other businesses to get ahead of the tax game and essentially position themselves where they're going to reduce the amount of tax they pay. I mean, I'm not sure if there's like a Instagram guy, what's it called, Punters Politics, who goes through and calls out all these businesses that pay next to zero tax on all their profits that they get.
Yeah.
And that's, it's a similar case, right? Is that they essentially were telling people how they could save money on taxes. And look, saving money on taxes, absolutely fine. But where PwC really broke down is that, and this is where it becomes really relevant to our listeners, because everyone's sitting there going, I don't advise government, how's this? I'm a tradie, this doesn't mean anything to me, is that it's all about trust. And so PwC lost their trust of pretty much anyone on their books. And so they've been bleeding business across the board. But what this has actually had a ripple-on effect on is across consulting in Australia completely, is that people are like, hang on a minute, if PwC does this, who's to say that Deloitte isn't doing it? And who's to say that Accenture isn't doing it? And so suddenly everyone's asking these questions of their consulting firms, like, hey, do we really need these guys? And so we've seen a massive reduction in spend across the board in government on consulting, massive reduction on private business as well. And it's not just PwC that's had to do cuts. Deloitte announced a restructure today across the globe, which is probably going to result in a round of layoffs that'll be coming to Australia soon. I mean, it's across the board. And one of the big things here that I want to draw out of this is the trust piece. And you need your clients to trust in you that you're going to do the job that's specified. And building that trust can come in a number of different ways. And one of the key ways to build trust is, the best way to get business is through referrals. So if Andrew has a good experience because he went through renovations in his house and he goes to his neighbour and says, hey, I use so-and-so, they do a great job, you should use them as well, then I'm more than likely going to call them and get them to come and do the job because Andrew said they did a good job. Whereas adversely, if Andrew said, yeah, look, it started off really good, but then they started chucking all these extra costs in, the work was scrappy, they rocked up late, didn't complete things on time, I had a really bad experience, then I would steer as far clear of those people as possible. So understanding that referrals are hard to track, but referrals are, the gold mine that you sit in. The next one is reviews. And I feel like this is one that's really underutilized by a lot of small businesses, is getting reviews from your customers and reducing the barriers. So I've seen some really good initiatives. There's a local chiropractor that I go to, and they actually have like a review counter board. So it shows how many reviews they've got and they update it daily. And it sort of brings like this social element to it, that you're contributing to something bigger. And it's really powerful because when you want to find a service of some kind, you just Google it and you'll see a whole heap of reviews. And if you see a whole heap of reviews on there that are really great, they've got 90, 100 reviews, you go, oh, wow, this company must be doing really, really well. Whereas if you're not pushing for reviews in your business, building that trust, then you're going to end up, in a similar way to PwC, where no one wants to do business with you. And then, the mass layoffs come. So that's where it sort of links in. But I think when we look at the business world and PwC, is that being a trustworthy and a credible business, especially in the small business space, is extremely important to booking new business and also getting repeat clients. That's where I'm going. Andrew, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think you make good points around, especially around referrals and reviews, and that's something that Teamgate internally has recently focused on. That's one of our biggest, channels is referrals and reviews. So it's definitely important, especially for those that might not have a large market presence or a large brand equity. Having that trust built. If like you said, if you're getting it referred from someone that you trust, then that trust is generally carried over for the company that they're referring you to. So, definitely some important points there. Unfortunately for PwC, it's resulting in mass layoffs. They've obviously had to sell their tax consulting piece. 350 layoffs in 2023. They just announced another 330 in March of this year. And it just shows, trust is a tricky one to balance. I'm sure that they built trust with the global clients they were serving by, giving them some insider information, but they've also broken NDAs with the Australian government and things like that, which is never a good look from the outside. So, yeah, trust is a key one, especially when you're working with small businesses or other businesses in your space. You need to build that trust however you can.
Yeah, but I'm sure if you're one of those companies that benefit from PwC providing you those tax, let's call them insights, you're also going to be now questioning, well, would they do it to me? And 100% exactly. They would, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
If they're willing to screw over a government, they're probably willing to screw over a private business. So I feel like it's short-term gain, long-term loss type scenario for PwC in that case.
Yeah. It's not a good look on anyone, unfortunately.
All right, I know I've rambled too much, and we're trying to keep these to about 30 minutes just to keep them short and impactful where possible. So, I mean, these segments will probably come up at the start of the session and then we'll go into the session. But, let's look at what we want to provide is learnings of the week, so what we've learned this past week. And then we also want to provide a quote of the week, something that we found interesting. So, Andrew, do you want to lead us off with your learning of the week?
Yeah, I've kind of already touched on this one, but the basics matter. So 5 minute response time, or just in general, high touch customer support is really effective. And our learning of the week is really the win of the week. We landed a pretty good customer this week who was comparing us to a much larger competitor. I won't say the name, but one of the big players in the CRM space. And it's all props to my support team and my sales team who had 3 or 4 calls with this prospect before the competitor even responded to their email or inquiry. So a really big win, not only on the book side of the house, but just to show that our culture of helping our customers is actually working. So that's my learning of the week. The basics matter. Be brilliant at the basics, as you and I both have learnt many, many times, Abe. So yeah, that's my learning of the week. What about yourself?
Yeah, so mine's a bit different about finding a way to stand out. Oh, it's not actually that much different. Essentially, it really links into your case quite well. Finding a way to stand out in a crowded and saturated market. So the CRM space, for those who don't know, is like hugely overpopulated with CRMs. Finding a way to stand out in that place. And for you, that was your quick response time. People go, wow, they answered me super quick. I want to be involved with this organization compared to the people who haven't answered me in 3 days or 3 weeks or whatever it may be. So that's one way to stand out. When we look at, bring it back to, trades or consulting or something like that, you look at the space of, when I look at leaving some sort of mark of recognition that you've done the job. So when we look at how you provide collateral, so if you're a electrician, for instance, and you're leaving a job site nice and clean, you're well known for your cleanliness after a job. It looks like no one's ever been there. The job's been done appropriately, and then leaving behind a business card or a review card or something like that, some sort of trademark behind that's going to allow them to leave a review easily, right? So standing out amongst the crowd in that sense, but it also means that someone could pass that business card on to someone else as a part of that as well. And something that might take you 5 minutes could mean the world to a client, such as, for instance, if a cleaning company is doing a builder's clean for for a business, they're going and doing a builder's clean before handover to the owner. What you could do then is have, builders produce a builder's report, give it to the owner, everything gets ticked off. You could produce a cleaner's report, right? And have that report as a part of it, have your business card there, and they may then book you for residential cleans after that. So it results in continuing business with that individual person. So figuring out a way to leave your mark after a job is done to enable either a review, a referral, or potentially even repeat business, I think is a really good way to just reframe finishing up a job. When you think like, now we've got to clean up. I hate this part of the job. It should be, all right, we've got to clean up, because that means that they'll refer us to their friends. They'll give us repeat business. Just reframing some of those things that might seem like a bit of a nuisance to you, but realistically mean the world to the client that you're working with.
Yeah, and that almost ties into it's like the actions after the sale, right? And that's pretty consistent across all industries. Like your support or your your effort once you've received that purchase or that money, your continued service to really enable that repurchase or renewed business into the future. So that's a good one.
Even if you are in the trade space or whatever space you're in, after the job's all done, potentially giving them a call and saying, hey, just confirming everything's all good. Yep, everything's all good. Fantastic. That's great news.
Yeah. The amount of times I've in my recent renos have forgotten a light switch or something here and had to get someone back out last minute. So yeah, recommend it for any industry. And quote of the week for me, in in the middle of every difficulty lies opportunity. And that one's from the one and only Albert Einstein. Ties into everything we've talked about today, whether it's PwC employees that were recently laid off, whether it's competing consultancy firms. The market's tough at the moment for a lot of industries with cost of living, cost of business, but there is opportunity, and that opportunity might be exactly what you've just spoke about, Abe. Finding that opportunity to stand out when times are tough, because when times get easier, you're going to be the one that the customers are already using and have the trust built into. So that's my quote of the week. What about yourself?
Yeah, my quote of the week is from Frank Slootman. And for those who don't know, Frank Slootman's like the IPO king in the software industry. I think he's had 3 IPOs, which is essentially listing on the stock market. So it's a big deal. And his quote is, if you don't know how to execute, every strategy will fail, even the most promising ones. And so you can come with a great plan, but if you can't execute it, then it's not worth the paper it's written on.
Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. All right, Mike Tyson.
Thanks.
There you go.
Thanks, Iron Mike.
Very, very true. Very, very true.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. I know we're over time for that 30-minute mark, but we'll look back at this and say, why were we rambling on about that random stuff for that long? But what I would say is, we're pre-recording this one, and the follow-ons are going to be live. So subscribe. What do they say? Hit the bell on YouTube.
Turn on your
so
notifications.
You get notified. Yeah, turn on your notifications. And one thing I just really like people to do is submit questions, because we really enjoy that two-way conversation. And in the end, if we get enough questions, it might end up being 15 minutes of us talking, 15 minutes answering questions. That would be absolutely golden. So we want this to be, community driven. So questions that you have, ideas, even if you want to say, hey, I'm thinking of doing X, Y, Z, then we'd love to, talk about a potential strategy for implementing that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I don't really know how to sign off, but we'll have all of our links, socials and whatnot in the description of the call. And until next time, go out there and crush it.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Cheers, everyone.
See you next week.